Yo guys, what's going on? Ace is here today with another video. In today's video, I wanted to talk about hatch keys in Arc Raiders because the last video when I made all of the updates of everything new since June 6th, I talked a lot about the hatch keys being changed. Now, we don't exactly know what's going to be happening to hatch keys, but Embark has very openly said that there was just too many people using the hatch keys and they want to reduce the amount of usage. So it was around 40% of the more skilled player base was using hatch keys. Now, they didn't go into any other details about the overall use rate, but the players who were a little bit better at the game, they were using hatch keys 40% of their raids. And I won't lie, that is definitely a lot. And I was 100% one of those people towards probably the last 2-3 hours that I was playing Arc Raiders on the last day. Like every single time I went in, I was taking a hatch key. And it's definitely in the current state. Now, it's obviously going to be changed. Embark already said they're going to be changing it. But when they were, in that current state, the last state we play with them in is the best way to word it. They were definitely too overpowered for the price and accessibility that you could get them at. So I think the first thing that needs to be looked at, I think Embark is going to be a little too extreme and it's going to create a really annoying gameplay loop if we have to just use one extract with 5 minutes left, for example. Or if you're forced to travel the entire map just to get to an extract, just to get out one or two quest items, task items, whatever. I think they should start with small changes and then work their way up if it's still not enough. I think nerfing small instead of nerfing crazy and then having to readjust after, I think starting out small is the right way to go. And let me explain. So I think the first thing that needs to happen is either a price increase or like a cooldown. So let's say kind of like Escape from Tarkov where the traders have restock timers. So if you can only buy a hatch key once per hour, you could keep it the same price. Because I think that's pretty reasonable. Once per hour, maybe once per 2 hours. But keep in mind the casual player base. So there is pros and cons to that even. There is pros and cons to everything. And the reason this is kind of a hot topic is because you can't really satisfy either side. It's going to be a hot take no matter what side you actually take on the take. So you could have like a 2-hour cooldown on hatch keys. But you could, if you weren't going to use the hatch key that raid, you could keep them in your stash and you could stock them up. But then you would probably say like, hey, what happens if somebody gets 20 hatch keys they're sitting on? Well, then Embark is going to have to look at putting a limit on the amount of hatch keys you can have in your stash, in your inventory. And maybe that's where that change ends. Maybe there is a cooldown on the amount of hatch keys you can buy per day, and there is an inventory limit of 2, of 4, of 10. Whatever that number has to be, and that would be a good way to start. Increasing the price. They were stupid cheap. I can't remember how expensive they were. It was either like 2K, 5K, 10K. They were extremely cheap. And they definitely should look at potentially raising the price. Not only does that create a money sink, which is good for any game and more playability, whether that's a 5x increase where, there was sometimes I would get a horrific spawn, a spawn I did not like, and I just took a hatch key to reset just to get out of the raid, without any risk. That would be negated if the price was 5x, 10x, what it was, because it just wouldn't be worth it. Now, I don't think if you're going to make them like super expensive or you're going to have really crazy cooldowns or limits to them, I think more extractions need to be added. Whether that is finding an item in raid that opens a different extract. Like, let's say you find a key card that leads you out, but it's only found in raid on that specific map. Or other ways to obtain hatch keys. Maybe any locked room is guaranteed to have a hatch key that not only will create a hotspot for people to try and hit first, and there's going to be more fighting. It's a loot incentive. You could do something like that as well, when it comes to providing other ways to get hatch keys. But I think the concept that really bothers me with them wanting to change the hatch keys is something I've already mentioned in this video, is that, only having one extraction point at the end of a raid almost guarantees you a gunfight. Now, sometimes that's good, sometimes that is bad. So in the good instances, that's when both players, meeting at the extract at the end of a raid, they're going to fight it out, or maybe they work together using prox chat. This is the good instance. The bad instance is you're going to get extract camped. Somebody could just sit in a bush, wait until the final 50 seconds, call the elevator, and get out of the raid pretty much without any risk at all. So there is no incentive for a player to extract from the 5-minute mark to the 1-minute mark, because odds are you're going to get extract camped. You have to go call the elevator. That is going to lock you in that animation for, 2-3 seconds. That is a perfect opportunity for you to either get naded, for you to get hit in the head with a sniper shot that's going to probably break your shield, or it's going to take your shields down enough to where swap weapons, hit you a few times, you're already at the disadvantage. If you're locked in an animation with only one extraction, it's not a feels good moment. You're going to have players, remember, this is at the end of the raid. You're going to have players who can only play a few hours a day, a few hours a week, maybe a few hours a month, the casual players. If they spend all their time in one single raid to die to an extract camper because they can't access any hatch keys, I think that is going to provide a poor experience, and it's going to increase the player fall off. I don't think they are thinking enough about the player repercussions of the casual player base. Now, don't get me wrong. Hatch keys, when it comes to the more advanced players, it's going to be a viable option. It's going to increase the progression exponentially when it comes to the players who are used to extraction shooters, whether they play Escape from Tarkov, they played the Cycle Frontier, other games that aren't exactly like looter shootery like Arc Raiders, maybe something similar to like Marauders or Hunt Showdown or other like DMZ, stuff like that, right? There's been other games in the past that aren't as hardcore as, Tarkov, and Arc Raiders, I think, is going to be the next best option for a lot of people. But like these players, man, I don't think they're being thought about enough. Selfishly, like I'm going to be using hatch keys. I think a lot of people who are on the favorable side of hatch keys are going to use them. But one of the arguments I saw, and we'll try and wrap this up here. I don't have a script or anything today. This is all off the top of my head. It's just purely authentic coming from yours truly. I think it's going to get to the point where the players who are saying, oh, I don't like hatch keys, they take away the feeling of the game and the intensity and all of this. It's like, guys, there is a super easy solution for you. Just don't buy a hatch key. Do not purchase a hatch key. Do not bring one in. It is genuinely that simple. The same concept applies to Tarkov. If you want raids to feel more intense, do not insure any of your gear. Do not do insurance fraud in Escape from Tarkov. It's the same exact concept. And to say that the hatch keys are going to hurt the overall amount of gunfights you're going to have at extracts, I actually disagree. In Escape from Tarkov, there are tons of extracts now. There are so many options, and there are still plenty of players going to every single extract. Arc Raiders, the maps are pretty damn big. There's a lot of players that are going to be loading in, and one thing I believe Arc Raiders does is if someone dies in like the first 5 minutes, like dies super early, I believe additional raiders actually load in, because there's been multiple times in the playtest where I would load into a raid, that's already been going for 8 minutes. I believe that is how the system is doing it. I believe it's like backfilling to provide a more consistent experience, going deeper into raids is the best way to put that. So, as for the hatch keys, are they too accessible in their current state? Absolutely. I am completely on everybody's side saying that they need nerf. They do. but they don't need nerf to the point where they're going to cost 100,000, or they can only be bought once per day, or they can only be found in raid. I think that is way too much. I think you got to start small and you have to work your way up to find a good balance. I don't think, trying to strive for players to only use hatch keys 5% of their raids, I think that is ridiculous. Now, that was not a statement made by them. That is a made-up number. But they said 40% was way too much. I don't think 40% is great, but I don't think 40% is the worst thing in the world. If you get that number down to 25, I think that's pretty good. 1 in 4 raids, you're taking a hatch key? That sounds pretty acceptable to me. And keep in mind, this is your more experienced players. Casual players probably aren't going to be using a hatch key, 1 in 2, 1 in 3 raids. That's just my opinion, though. Let me know what you guys think. Where is the perfect balance point for hatch keys? Let me know down in the comments. All of your opinions and your criticisms to hatch keys are valid because, it's just our opinion based on our own gameplay experiences. Now, if you haven't yet played Arc Raiders, I really do not think you should comment on it yet, because if you didn't use the hatch keys and you didn't experience what it's like only having 1 extract to go to instead of 2 extracts to go to, it's a completely different feel in the game. So, not to discredit anybody, but if you didn't play, I don't think you have a valid opinion in this current exact moment. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you didn't play, you can still let me know what you think, but just make it abundantly clear, like, hey, I didn't play the playtest, but I watched X gameplay, I watched this streamer, and they used hatch keys every raid, and you could just go like that. That is a great way to start it. So let me know what you think down in the comments. I definitely think hatch keys are needed to be, nerfed a little bit, but just the way they made it sound like they wanted to take the damn things out of the game, and I think that's way too far unless they plan on adding other extraction options. Let me know what you think down below. Leave a like, subscribe. See you in the next one. I'm out.